Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. My name is Kelly Fargo. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Global CTI. I'd like to introduce our technology services expert, Janice Anderson. She has relationships with tons of manufacturers and suppliers and is sort of our in-house vendor agnostic master agent. Today she's going to talk to you about future-proofing your voice network. Janice?
Hey, thanks, Kelly. Good morning, everyone. We have you on mute just so that doorbells or dogs don't interrupt the broadcast, but we're going to open up the lines as soon as I'm done sharing some of the information with you. So please feel free to answer, have questions ready. If something hits you as a question you want to make sure that we get answered, just put it in the question box or in the chat box to the bottom right of your meeting window. And we're happy to address those. If Kelly has something that we want to break, she'll let me know. But today we wanted to just chat with our customers and folks out there that we work with about future-proofing your voice network. On the operations side here at Global CTI, I work with a lot of customers who have long-standing ShoreTel or MyTel voice systems, premise-based systems, and a lot of people are asking me about how do I really get my voice system disaster recovery? How do I guard against, power outages or events that might, interrupt voice access? And there's a lot of questions about newer technologies. Do I put things in the cloud? Is the cloud safe? Can I move my voice circuits off the old copper circuits to SIP trunks? So today what we want to kind of go through are some of those things. The agenda is going to be, we're going to talk about SIP trunks first of all. A lot of questions have come to us from our customers and prospects about, is it right for SIP? Is SIP, enterprise ready? And we'll talk about some of the advantages of using SIP trunks in your network design. We're also going to talk about unified communication as a service, or, telecom loves acronyms, UCaaS. Basically, voice in the cloud or hosted PBX. Those are all synonymous terms. They all kind of mean the same thing. Basically, your PBX is hosted by a provider in a data center somewhere, and you get access to those features and functions, and your phones connect through your internet connection or a private circuit. And then we're going to touch a little bit on a technology called software-defined wide area networking. Again, the acronym for that is SD-WAN. And really, we're going to talk about that because as you move more applications and services into the cloud, software-defined WAN is a way to help manage those applications and their performance. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. So first of all, let's talk about SIP trunks. This is an example of a voice network that's got multiple sites. We've got home workers up here in the right corner. I've got a New York office that's connected to maybe an old TDM or an old digital phone system. And then I've got my main headquarters and maybe an office internationally in London. And when we talk about designing SIP trunks for our voice network, what we're doing is we're replacing what might be old, we call PRI or traditional telephony circuits, with a service that carries your voice into your network through an IP or internet-based connection. Some providers will bring you a private circuit like an MPLS link in and bring your SIP service in over that. Some do what we call over the top, meaning you bring your own internet, BYOB, bring your own bandwidth, and then they provide SIP trunks and point it in over your existing internet service. So the cloud here to the bottom left that says SIP ITSP is representative of either that private or over the top cloud that's bringing access into your phone system. And this internet service provider or SIP trunk provider, internet telephony service provider, is going to link into your phone system, usually through a gateway of some kind. What I have here is the partner that MyTel uses called InGate. There's a product called an Insiperator. And this is a little translation box that takes that SIP trunk service that's coming in over the internet and just allows it to connect into your phone system in a very clean way. It kind of does a little bit of smoothing and conditioning of the service so that everything works as expected. It can also act as a security device. So a lot of people are asking us about, is taking my voice over the internet secure? This little box can actually help secure the transport of that voice into your network. It can kind of act as a firewall for your voice, so to speak. So one of the things that people are asking us is, if I move to SIP, how does that make my voice network more resilient? Well, let's look at a couple things in this design. In the bottom left where my main trunks are coming in, I've got them coming in through an InGate, but notice that up in London, I also have an internet transport SIP provider coming into my London office. I've got a few trunks over there. If I have my primary group configured here at the headquarters, I can have all my phone numbers coming in here and then taking those phone numbers off to the remote sites or my remote workers. But if something happens to this link, the service provider, a fiber-seeking backhoe takes out my internet link, I've still got my service provider out there in the cloud. So calls are still coming in and hitting my service provider, but it can't deliver it over this last link into my network. The nice thing about SIP trunks is I can do a couple of things to fail this over. I can reroute my internet service provider. I can say, you know what, service provider, instead of pointing to this IP address here at my headquarters, I want you to take my SIP trunks and just repoint them to this other IP address that I have on a network in London. My voice system is a one network. I can take calls in at any location and still transport them to phones back in San Francisco. So in a way, I can reroute to a secondary or backup SIP trunk group that I have pre-configured, or maybe I use this as local SIP trunk access in London, but when my main site's down, I can bring those main numbers in very quickly with a single phone call and just a quick reroute, or I can even automate this using my router or my data network to automatically say, boy, if I ever can't get a call in here, go ahead and just fail over to the secondary IP. And so you can set that to be kind of manual or automatic failover. The other thing you could do is you can also have a secondary ISP. So here at my headquarters, I could have 2 internet circuits coming in. And if one internet circuit goes down, I can tell my SIP trunk provider, just point it in over this other service provider. I don't have to bring in a new circuit. I don't have to have new copper or new facilities at my site. All of this is happening through simple rerouting of an IP address to a backup or secondary location. Very quick to reroute, very quick to have failover. And I can have failover at any one of my sites. I could put in some SIP trunks over at the New York site and just bring them right into that T1 box that's sitting there in the New York office as a failover as well. So a lot of people design, maybe a primary and a backup site. Maybe your primary group is in a data center, and if for some reason there's access problems at the data center, you can reroute to a physical headquarter location. So lots of ways to design around this. And the nice thing about SIP trunks, it's pretty instant. You don't have to wait for a telecom van to come and hook up any circuits or anything like that. So that's really where we're enjoying the benefits of the easy to reroute functionality of the SIP trunks. The other thing we like about SIP trunks is they've got some ability to kind of future-proof and scale easily. One of the things that I really like about SIP trunks is basically the carriers have been carrying your voice traffic using SIP transport on their back end for years. They are peeling away support for those old copper lines that are sitting and kind of either, every time it rains when your PRI goes down, it's because the copper in those lines is just, it's aging, the infrastructure is aging, and it's expensive for carriers to support that. So one of the things that we like about moving people to SIP is we know that it's future-proofing them. The carriers are going to continue to add new services into SIP. SIP is going to have more features added to it. So you can't add things like texting to a landline over a traditional PRI circuit, but we can use SIP trunks to bring in those types of services. SMS and texting is a communication that's we're not seeing any reduction in the use of that. We know, the new generation, that's primarily how they communicate. So having new features like that to be able to scale and add into our networks is really nice. And SIP trunks allow us to have some of the flexibility in that. The other nice thing about SIP trunks and future-proofing is for yourself. If you move, you've got the old carrier circuits, old TDM circuits, your phone number is kind of tied to a physical geography. So if I move across town, but it ends up being a different area code or a different calling zone, a traditional PRI circuit's not going to let me take those numbers to that other side of town because it's a different billing area for them. They're kind of restricted in moving that. I could call forward those numbers, but if you've ever had to do that, it's expensive. The carrier charges you usually per call, and those costs can add up quickly. Where in the SIP trunk world, the need to have a phone number tied to a physical area goes away. SIP trunk providers can take any phone number and really point it to any IP location. They're not bound by those geographical rules. So you get to take your number with you if you move. Similarly, if you grow or scale, if you need to add new trunks to your service, the old traditional PRIs and copper lines come in pretty much come in pre-configured bundles of like 23 channels or a minimum of 12 channels. Most SIP trunk providers, if they're not charging you based on your usage, they're charging you based on one-to-one call paths. So each SIP trunk carries one call, and so you would have one call path or one SIP quote-unquote trunk per call, and you can usually add those onesie-twosies with your SIP trunk providers. So you can scale in a very digestible way. You may not need to add 23 lines. You may just need 4 or 5 more. So it gives you that option to kind of scale up. Here's something else I didn't really think about until I was doing some evaluation into this. But SIP trunks allow you, because of that flexibility with numbers. I might have a Los Angeles headquarters, but I might have a lot of customers in New York. The way we used to handle those New York customers is we gave them an 800 number. We said, call our 800 number. But on my end, I'm paying for every one of those calls that comes in because it's a long distance call. It just gets charged to me instead of my customer. With SIP trunks, you can ask your carrier for a local New York phone number. It ends up being a local call, so you're not charged long distance charges for that call. And it kind of gives you the ability to give a local presence. Your New York customers might think, oh, I've got it's a local call here to this business, so it gives you a better presence to your customers, and you get to peel away the long distance charges from the 800 number. You don't have to have 800 numbers to get calls into a local area. So that was something I didn't really think about, and I thought, well, that's kind of a nice feature. The other thing is, in our previous design, we talked about maybe having our trunks come into a data center. Well, your phone numbers may not be in that same location as your data center, but the nice thing is with SIP trunks, you can take numbers even from multiple locations, streamline them all into a single circuit at a data center, and really have a nice, robust data center location where your trunks come in, and move those numbers into that single location. So you can kind of consolidate all of your business numbers into a single kind of robust data center location without the need to call forward numbers and things like that. So scaling and future-proofing, all of those things are some really nice benefits that we're seeing with SIP trunks. I'm not going too much in here into cost savings, but typically SIP trunk providers also give you what I like to call an all-you-can-eat calling plan. So if you were paying for local long distance and local calling on any of your traditional circuit plans, most SIP trunk providers kind of bundle that into a, here's your trunks and here's a bundled number of minutes, whether they're local or long distance. So that can save money depending on your calling patterns. So the other thing people have asked us about is putting my PBX in the cloud. So some folks are saying, I've got hardware here at my site. I'm in a disaster-prone area. Maybe I'm in the South where we're prone to flooding, or I'm in the Midwest where we're prone to hurricanes, and I'm really nervous about having my PBX here at my site. I really want to kind of release myself from having to have my physical equipment here on site. I'd like my PBX to be in a secure data center, and I really want to move to an operational expense. I don't want to buy the equipment. I want to just pay for it monthly. That makes a good case for moving to a hosted PBX or putting that PBX in a cloud or unified communication as a service bundle. So the nice thing about failover when your PBX is in the cloud, number one, it's going to be hosted in a secure data center. All of our hosted cloud partners have their core infrastructure in some of the world's largest and most secure and most resilient, redundant, and power-generated data centers. Cirrus One in Dallas and other big data centers where you're sharing space with people like Amazon.com or Walmart.com and big robust centers. So you've got that security. But a lot of people say, that's great. If I've got my PBX in the cloud, I know it's robust and secure and it's always going to be available. But what happens when my internet connection goes down? That's how I get to my PBX. And what most of the hosted PBX providers has done is they've said, that's fine if you lose your internet connection. We can do one of two things. Some will put a little box on site that will reroute your calls to a local analog number. So you can see the little black phone here where it says forward calls to another office or IP phone. Some folks, depending on how busy your calling patterns are, will have a couple phones that they can plug into the back of an analog fax line, and they can shoot your phone calls there if there's an outage. But most people will take their employees, will reroute their calls just straight into their voicemail. They can then check their voicemail over an email link and then respond back using a cell phone, or they just route their phone numbers to something like an outside cell phone number. And most of the hosted providers are going to give you a voicemail to email. We call that unified messaging. So if you're down, you're at least still getting messages from your customers and then can call them back, or just route calls directly to a cell phone or to an alternate phone, like a backup analog line. So there's some nice, robust failover scenarios where you can be supported if you put your voice into a hosted PBX. And the other thing about hosted PBX is there's some nice future-proofing and scalability with hosted PBX too. A lot of our customers really like the fact that with a PBX that's hosted, everything, again, kind of like SIP trunks, you get them onesie twosie, you can grow your PBX onesie twosie with a hosted SIP trunk. So you've got a flexible ability to grow or retract your user count based on seasonal demands. If you're in retail, the holidays, you may hire additional staff, but you don't want to commit to having that quantity of staff all the time. If you own your PBX, you're going to have to buy those licenses and they're perpetual. You own them forever. So the hosted PBX, you can add on 10, 15, 20, maybe 50 staff members to take care of the holiday or Mother's Day or summertime seasonal demand, but then peel those off, cancel those additional seats for the slower times. So you can ebb and flow and really have your costs match your demand. The new features are also immediately available with a hosted PBX. So feature by feature, maybe Kelly wants to have voicemail transcription. She finds herself in meetings a lot where she wants to have those voicemails that are left for her transcribed into text so she can just read it quickly on her cell phone instead of having to call in to check her voicemail. I can turn that on for Kelly. If she doesn't like the feature, I can turn it off. I don't have to pay for it forever, and I don't have to enable that feature for everyone. It's not like I have to buy a new server and put that in my data closet and then have those features buy it all in one chunk. I can just onesie twosie enable those small features. The other thing is you can do that only for those who need it. So again, they are immediately available. You don't have to wait for that server to be installed, and you get them for each user. Again, hosted PBXs are also going to give you that ability to add numbers even outside your geographical market. So a hosted PBX, you can add sometimes even global numbers. You might want to open up a market in Mexico or Canada, and you don't have staff there, but you want to give those local callers the ability to call you. So you can add geographical numbers in local markets, and then just point those numbers into your call center in Los Angeles or Houston or wherever it may be. So lots of flexibility, future-proofing, and digestible scalability with hosted or cloud-based phone systems. So the last question I get from people, now that we've got our SIP trunks coming in over our internet and we can fail them over and do all of these nice things, we can grow in a digestible amount of time and in the pace that we need to, what happens if I lose that internet connection? That's, kind of your Achilles heel when you're putting things in the cloud. Everything comes in over the internet, but if anything happens on internet connection, what do you do? So most people have a primary and a backup internet. Great thing about that, primary internet goes down, you just have your little local router say, oh, this internet connection isn't available, try this other one, try the backup one. So you have your data network set up to just fail over to that backup internet circuit, but you're paying for that backup internet circuit. And if it just sits there and is only used in the rare instance that your internet goes down, you might be losing money. It might, it's not as cost effective to just have something sitting there lying in wait. So there are ways to reroute traffic to an alternate ISP. You can do that easily through your data programming. But if you're going to pay for that second circuit, it's nice to be able to maybe take advantage of it. So it's not easy to load balance that, through your traditional routing and networks. And you kind of set it and forget it. You can't dynamically change which application is using the primary or the backup circuit. And as application demand grows or changes, you might want to be able to move that around as you need. And then the other thing is, if you've got a primary and a backup internet circuit or two internet circuits that you want to load balance against, how do you prioritize those business critical applications? I don't want someone's Pandora streaming to take over my need to get to my business critical CRM or ERP application. So how do I tell my internet links which application should be prioritized? And with those priority applications, am I sure that they're getting the priority that they need? How do I validate that even though I say this application is more important than the other one, how do I ensure that? So what a lot of customers are asking us about lately is the software-defined wide area networking, or SD-WAN. This can be kind of an overlay solution. There's a couple delivery models. One thing that an SD-WAN lets you do is a lot of the SD-WAN providers, instead of having to go ship a router and a firewall and a lot of equipment out to your branch offices, They will handle connectivity to a branch office with a single local box that comes pre-configured. It's controlled through the cloud. You just plug in a local box and you enable the users of that branch office access and control of their internet-based applications. You can pool those WAN or virtual resources. So you might have a traditional MPLS network, you might have internet service, you might have your internet service provider might offer you something like wireless backup to your internet. So if anyone cuts the landline or the fiber or the copper internet circuit that comes into your building, they go, that's okay, we'll just take you over an LTE or a wireless network. So how do you pool those resources? So how do you make an intelligent or cost-effective use of all those resources that you're paying for? And then how do you enforce security? How do your secure applications use the secure network link and web browsing and other applications like YouTube or access to email? How do those use the appropriate link? So software-defined networking allows you to, from the application level, take things like your SAP or your Citrix and say, you know what? I've got sensitive customer data that goes over Citrix and SAP. So I want that to route over my MPLS network here at the bottom cloud. And then software-defined WAN lets you, by application, say, Citrix traffic, I can recognize you because my software-defined wide area network box and network lets me see all the way up to what we call layer 7 in the OSI model or in the network model. It lets you see the application. And I can say, Citrix, you go over private MPLS. Anyone who's looking at YouTube videos, send that out the old public internet. That's not as secure. We don't need that locked down. You can go out the public internet. But things like my voice, if my voice ever has trouble, it has to have service. It has to come in right order. So I want my Mitel voice or my Office 365 to use the internet, but if it ever needs to back up, it will also transpose itself over onto my wireless network and use the wireless links so that I don't ever have outages. Some of the SD-WAN providers actually take your traffic. On the left here, we have our end user network coming over our end user firewall. The little device that they put on site is going to be a little router, and that router is going to encapsulate all of your internet traffic, whether it's hosted voice, Office 365, your SAP, any of Amazon Web Service. All of that's going to go from your location. It's going to hit their device, and it's going to be encapsulated in the secure tunnel. With this provider in particular, this is one of our software-defined WAN providers called Big Leaf. They take all your traffic to their data center, encapsulate it in a secure tunnel, and then they send it out to the internet. They actually replace your internet traffic IP with their single IP address. Let me tell you about why that's a benefit. Same IP failover. If you've got multiple internet links, or MPLS plus internet plus wireless like LTE, when they take over your traffic and they put their IP on it, say I'm on a voice call and my internet service provider goes down, I don't have to reroute to a different IP address to keep that phone call up. Because Big Leaf is taking their IP, they are responding back to my internet service provider with their IP. It doesn't matter if the internet service provider A goes down, they automatically reroute that over internet service provider B, and I don't even lose my phone call. So that same IP failover allows for dynamic and delay-sensitive applications to stay up without having to reroute to a second IP and lose it and reconnect. So it keeps that connection up even if the IP that I'm transmitting to on the back end goes down. Their overlay IP is managing that connection. Dynamic QoS is something a software-defined wide area network provider can also do. And what that means is if I've got a link, I'm promised 5 meg internet access, but maybe it's a shared cable resource. Like I've got a cable provider, but late in the afternoon it gets busy, and a shared cable internet access provider may give me up to 5 megs, but late in the afternoon they're only really delivering me like 2 megs. If I have my QoS set for 3 megs, I'm going to drop packets anywhere between 2 and 3 megs. What a dynamic QoS setting will do is say, you know what, you may have said that you get 5 megs from this provider, but I'm only seeing 3. I'm going to drop the QoS down to 2 and not discard packets that go above 2. So it allows your delay-sensitive traffic to be treated with whatever real-time QoS you're actually getting, not a set it and forget it setting that always is expecting 5 megs. If your QoS drops to 2 megs of bandwidth, the QoS queuing mechanism will also drop to match that 2 meg availability. Intelligent load balancing, we've already talked about a little bit, but that's where I can have multiple internet service providers, and it will not only fail over if one is down, but it'll also say, you know what, I've got enough available bandwidth over here. I know it's a backup circuit, but let's send our non-critical traffic over the backup circuit and take advantage of something you're paying for. And then, of course, the last thing here is that SD-WAN providers have really made it easy. Usually, most providers will ship you a box. You plug the box in, and you may just change an IP address on your firewall. And so they send everything pre-configured, and if you need to bring up a branch office, you can literally take that box, ship it with a firewall, plug those 2 boxes in, and you're up and running. Some of the boxes themselves even act as firewalls, so it might even be a single box plug-in, network switch and computers, and your remote office is up and running. A couple people ask us questions. If I move to a software-defined overlay or software-defined wide area network solution, do I keep my current network equipment? This is a maybe, but most of the time we're going to want you to keep track or maintain your network firewall. You might have things that your firewall does that are kind of above and beyond what the SD-WAN box can do. It can provide some tunneling and security, but you might have very specific rules that your firewall manages. So a lot of people do keep their firewall, but over time you can peel off things like a separate router that you're managing, or maybe you had something that did WAN acceleration or things like that. The SD-WAN box is going to take over what those other pieces of equipment were doing. The other question I get with SD-WANs is, if I don't have 2 internet connections, like one of the things you're telling me, Janice, is that, having a software-defined WAN service lets me pick, 2 different internet circuits or a private MPLS network and an internet network, and it'll let me load balance and use both of those in failover. But do I need 2 internet connections? Maybe I just have one really good pipe that I like. There are benefits of having a single internet connection and still using software-defined WAN. If you remember, one of the things we can do is we can prioritize at the application level. So even if I have one internet circuit, I can still tell my SD-WAN box through the cloud controller that it has, I can still tell it, you know what, my SAP and my Citrix traffic are a priority. Send those first. Hold back YouTube. Hold back Pandora streaming. If there's extra bandwidth, you can allow those if you want to, but at the application level, a software-defined wide area network solution can give you visibility into which applications need priority and allow you to prioritize on an application level. The other thing is, if your single internet circuit drops in its bandwidth availability, remember that dynamic QoS feature, it will say, you know what, we're going to drop our expectations of how much bandwidth we have, so I'm not discarding critical delay sensitive traffic. So dynamic QoS and application visibility and control are 2 benefits, even if you only have a single internet link. And lastly, questions and answers. We got 3 minutes left. So I don't know, Kelly, if you had any questions come in over the chat or question box.
Yes, we actually have a couple. Shannon wants to know, if I'm interested in SIP, what is my first step?
Very good. So excellent question. So Global CTI has relationships with multiple SIP trunk providers. What we'll do is we'd want you to get in touch with us. You can email me directly, or we'll put some contact information in follow-up. And what we'll do is take a look at what phone system you're using. If you're on the ShoreTel, MyTel phone systems, we have what we call our Tech Connect bundle of partners who validated their SIP trunk service to work plug and play with ShoreTel or MyTel Connect phone systems. And so we're going to prefer those Tech Connect validated partners for you. MyTel themselves has a SIP trunk service, so you can kind of go with your same manufacturer and use them as your service provider. And there's different ways that people connect in using private circuits and along with the SIP trunk provider from the same provider. Other SIP trunk providers are what we call over the top. So they really will say, you bring your own internet, we'll lay our SIP trunks on top of that, and we'll see which situation is going to work best for you. So we'll help you evaluate that. And we can get pricing from multiple providers and help you kind of compare and contrast the providers to find the right fit for you. So we have access to dozens and dozens of SIP trunk providers, and we'll work with you to find the best one.
Awesome. Josh wants to know, can I still use my same phones if I go to the cloud?
That's another good question I get a lot. So that's good. That's a big, it depends. For our ShoreTel Mitel customers, those of you who have the 400 series phone, so maybe you got your, you went to ShoreTel Connect or are still running ShoreTel version 14, and you've got the 400 series phones. Those can typically be set for a firmware that can work with your cloud, so you can reuse those. Others may have Polycom or Yealink type phones. Maybe they had SIP phones that they've brought into their phone system. A lot of those phones can be repurposed. What we'll do is we'll kind of take a look at the model and the firmware that's available on those phones, and we'll see if those are available to move to whatever hosted provider you're looking at. So we need to get those phone models from you and run that through the providers you're considering to see which ones can be used. A lot of the hosted providers out there are using Polycom and Yealinks. And then ShoreTel Mitel uses their own ShoreTel phones or some of the 6900 series Mitel phones on some of the hosted products. So definitely contact us about that. Best case scenario is you can reuse them. Sometimes you'll just need to rent them as part of your service when you move forward because you need to upgrade that hardware.
Awesome. Well, that's it for questions, and it's 10:30. You're pretty good at your timing.
Yeah, I planned it that way.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm going to follow up for all of you with a recording with our contact information also. So if you have any further questions or if you want to take a deeper dive, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Have a great morning.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Janice.
Bye-bye.